Bonnie Blue, and I'm a spiritual healer who has done over 1,000 tantra massages with women. And I have the ability to feel blockages and feel problems in people that they don't see themselves. For example, I have a friend who sometimes sends me like photos, and he's like, "Can you make an analysis of the photo and of the person on the photo?" And I say, "Yeah, I know. I feel this or that about the person," and then he's like, "Wow, you got them totally right," and one of his friends or something. So in any case, I'm really good in recognizing and um, really good in recognizing and analyzing people and knowing like what's in their energy field that is missing. And I was looking at maybe like 30, 40 minutes of Bonnie Blue, and I was trying to feel into what's going on. And so I watched, I have never seen her porn or something. I've just seen like the Andrew Tate Bonnie interview, and I've seen shortly. And one thing that I first point out, like the first is she is she's not that easy to read, interestingly, but it's also because I think she's not as smart as people think that she is. Um, she thinks herself as smart. I don't think she is as smart. I don't think she's stupid, but she's like selectively smart. But I think that the central kind of issue with Bonnie Blue is the need for validation and the need for acceptance, because what I recognized, I guess everybody has that, but what I recognized in the interview, it seemed like she wanted to be desperately part of the clique of she wanted to be part of the group in the conversation. And I felt that if the interview, which was Rob and Andrew, would have stuck together a little bit more as men, then I feel that she would have felt very triggered by that. That was one of my impressions that I had. So I assume that her need of validation by men is connected to her sexuality. That happens to a lot of women, that if they didn't, if they were in some form of fashion neglected or didn't receive the attention that they craved, then they will use sexuality as a way to get that kind of validation and attention. And she's obviously on purpose trying to be sensational about it, because you can make money without being sensational about it, but she decided on purpose to be sensational about it. So she wants attention. I would go even so far to say that some people want so much attention that for that they will become self-destructive. It's kind of like when people on purpose cut, like with a razor blade, cut their arms and stuff, because they want others to see it. They want others to notice. And it's not necessarily that they want help from others, but they want to kind of communicate like, you are responsible for my misery, so I want you to feel bad for what's happening with my life. So that could be also part of the equation. And it's very probable, because that kind of sensationalist need and desire to get so much attention uh, is basically like, look, at me, I'm doing this destructive thing so you can see what you've done. Kind of like in that regard, in this. And interestingly enough, is a lot of people are very easy to read energetically, and she's not super easy to read. Um, if you think about, um, let's talk about superficial things like when you see her dress. For example, when she dressed for that interview, she dressed kind of conservatively. I don't know if you've noticed that. She dressed very conservatively, and she dressed very conservatively, and she had a lot of makeup on, and she tends to put a lot of makeup on her cheeks, and she's trying to look a little bit like a tiny doll, like a little doll, like a dancing doll or something like. So she sees herself as being kind of like a cute little girl that is in a way also a doll. Kind of like almost like the Russian girls always see themselves. Um, and because she could have dressed, kind of like an American slut or something, with hot pants and I don't know what. Like, there's tons of options. But this was more like one of these. Like when I think about how she dressed, it was more like this dancing doll, and it like turns and spins. And to me, that communicates something, and it communicates. I'm gonna go into my intuition now to feel like what I feel about this, because I've just realized this talking now about it that that's how she tries to portray herself. It's almost like desperation. It feels a little bit desperation. It feels like desperation is like, look at me. And I think it would be super interesting to look at her relationship to men as she was very young, to her father, to grandfather, to other men. And you know what's super interesting? As a tantric expert, I can tell you the quantity does not make up for the quality, in the sense, if you have very good tantric experience with another conscious being, the normal kind of sex will never come close to that. So no matter how many men you have, even if you have like 1,000 men for her, it cannot make up for for that tantric intimacy you would have in a good tantric experience. And the reason I'm saying this is because to me that makes it obvious that she's seeking for something else. It's not just the sexual pleasure. Um, there must be something else going on. And it's almost like exactly as I was saying before. It's like it feels like the look at what you did to me, and now see the pain of what you did to me. It really feels like that. Um, and I think the ability to make money from it is not in the center of it. She's not a porn star. She's not someone who says, I do this for the money. And she also said this, I think, in one of the interviews. She said she doesn't do it for the money, she would do it anyway. So, um, I think it's super interesting to think about where this kind of energy comes from to understand whether that's something that is a societal problem I would say, from my experience from the Tantra massages, I would say that there's a lot of traumas in society which can be very different from each other, but a lot of people have hard experiences. For example, I'll give you one example. I had a woman that came to me that never had an orgasm, and she said, like, I would love to see if an expert can help me. And but what came out in the session was actually that she was raped when she was 18 years old. She never told anyone, not even her husband or other boyfriends that she had. And because she was afraid to get that stigmatization of she's now the woman that had been raped, which I totally understand. So, and she suppressed that experience. She was already over 40 years old, and she suppressed that experience for over 20 years. And so I'm saying this because sometimes there are traumas which people are not even aware of or are suppressed consciously or unconsciously, that actually then decide your behavioral patterns. So it's very probable that Bonnie Blue experienced something which she's consciously or unconsciously suppressing that made her make those choices. And I think there's a huge difference between, saying being on OnlyFans and showing your private parts, or whether you are, purposefully seeking 1,000, men to come on your body or something. So, of course, I think that a lot of men who are nice guys underestimate that that women have a very profound sexuality, which they can experience in very adventurous ways. For example, even before my tantra massages, I met a woman. She did this kind of like rounds of men where a lot of men would, take her and stuff like that. And I think that's something that's a little bit underestimated, that as women are liberated sexual in a sexual way, that a lot of women are experiencing and experimenting with those energies. Um, and she's one of the extremes of that, Bonnie Blue. Um, but there is a certain threshold to where you would say this is energetically, mentally, spiritually, on a soul level, not healthy to you. But a lot of people do very destructive behaviors to themselves. One of the things, for example, that amazed me absolutely is that the 1,000 men that she had, that they were not STD tested beforehand. And she was like, no, well, they have condoms, so when you know that condoms are maybe just like an 98% protection but not 100% protection, so it's extremely reckless. It's like jumping out of an airplane and not checking your parachute. So it's it's reckless behavior. It's energetically really bad behavior, by the way. I can attest to that as a tantra master 100%. As energetically, it's extremely reckless. And her energy field, I mean, it's something else when you're in the same room with the person, uh, as when you see them on an interview in the video. But so I cannot feel her energy field as if I were in the same room. But um, it could be also, and this is something that's real, it could be that on certain chakras, let's say the first and second chakra, that she's damaged in some way, and the rest of the chakras are kind of fine. That's also why she can appear intelligent if the upper chakras are working well. She can appear intelligent, but be severely blocked on the lower chakras. And the interesting thing about very quick sex is that it's actually a form of energetic rape, even if she consents to it. I'm not talking legally, I'm still speaking like energetically. Um, it's a little bit like masturbating when you don't really want to masturbate, but you're still doing it. it's a form of energetic rape. And the problem with this is that what she was doing was actually re-raping herself all the time. So it was almost like punishing herself for something. She was punishing herself, and by being public about it, it was like she wanted also to punish someone else with it. And I think usually I'm not very far off from these kind of analysis of people, and but you we will never figure out the truth unless she would be, for example, in a tantric session with me, which I probably wouldn't do anyway, even if she asked me for it. Because I learned to protect my energetic field, and I only take people organically now, and if it arises by the universe without marketing, and if it doesn't, I don't do it. And uh, you cannot. One thing that I noticed during the interview is I did feel there's some sadness in her energy field. I mean, you got think about also the triangle of Rob, Andrew, and her being on that podcast. It just feels like a couple bunch of narcissists coming together and spewing their nonsense, and you and usually these people that come together, they have similar energetic fields. And one thing that I definitely know about Andrew Tate, and that would make Bonnie be in the same category then, um, is that that Andrew's heart chakra is completely closed. And you see that by some of his responses about children, the way to raise children. So you recognize his heart chakra is completely closed, and which is caused by his parents, basically. Um, and for her, it's going to be very similar or the same, um, except that we don't know much about her, whereas about the Tates, we know a little bit more. So one thing is absolutely clear, that these kind of extremes of people, which is really the toxic part of society, you should not take any advice at all. And that's the worst thing, that people, and especially young men and women, are so lost that you're using these extreme examples because of polarization and how the algorithms love, the technological AI algorithms love polarized content. That's how Bonnie and Andrew became big. So basically, online content, and this is super interesting, online content is actually, which reaches your children, is, hold on. Hostia, tío, mira, mira, te lo juro. Tengo por todos los lados. O sea, yo en la vida, en el camping, desde que no lo miro, nunca, nunca, nunca en la vida. ¿Qué vas a hacer, papá? Tú te levantas, cuenta algo y Spanish people, when they talk, are super annoying. That AI algorithms are experts in delivering toxic content to your children, because the content that is the most controversial gets pushed the most. And so it's no surprise that somebody like Bonnie, Saya Psychology, Andrew Tate, I'm sure there's going to be more soon in the future, where more and more toxic celebrities are going to pop up. Like, people who become famous because of those algorithms, and they basically decide how your children think. So imagine you're a father, and imagine you're a father in a household, you're trying to raise normal children, and your son starts to speak like Andrew Tate, and your daughter starts to speak like Bonnie, what's her name, Bonnie Blue, and you're like, what the fuck? And this is literally the, I think it's the worst time in the history of Earth to raise children. And so I think Bonnie Blue is just as traumatized as Andrew Tate, but she is, as a woman, she's obviously um working through that trauma in a different way than he is, but they're both unconscious and ignorant to what's actually happening in their energy field. And the only reason why people give them so much attention, because it's entertaining, because it's kind of like a car crash. You cannot look away. It's like you're looking at very damaged people, and you're like, hey, this is more entertaining than, watching a wildlife documentary. And there's also something interesting, that sometimes they say things which are kind of like half truth, or things that seem like truth but they're not really healthy. um and so your logical mind is connected to it. It's like, oh, Andrew Tate is right about a lot of things he says. Oh, Bonnie Blue is right about a lot of things she says. But overall, the energetic field is broken. So the only way to look past this is really if you get away from what they're actually saying to actually how what they're doing and how they are. And that's a it's very difficult for people to do. Um, because Andrew Tate, for example, is highly narcissistic, extremely narcissistic. And Bonnie Blue is not going to be very much different. She just processes it differently. And she's probably, and they're both kind of victims. They're victims of bad parenting and bad society. And that's where I'm going to leave it for now.